The first thing that I ask whoever I'm consulting is, why are you building this? I feel a lot of times we, myself included, when we do something, I might do it because I really like it or I really think it's cool. But if it's something that we want to commercialize, something that we want to really get out into the marketplace, and something that we want to use to add value to people's lives, we really have to have a clear understanding of, why are we building this? Who's having a problem? And what is that problem? And as a marketer, as a content marketer, one of the things that I say is to speak to me plainly, clearly, as if I am a 6-year-old.
Hello, and welcome to the Write Podcast, your source for inspiration in content writing, marketing, and strategizing. Every week, I come on and share entrepreneurial stories, online writing tips, content strategy help, and more to impact your life and habits as a content marketer. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to episode 18 in the Write Podcast. In today's episode, I have Keesa Schreane, the platform's API and analytics content marketing head at Thomson Reuters. Keesa is joining me today to discuss how online content works hand in hand with customer relationships and service, which is a very unique topic. I think that will be of much interest to our audience. And I listened to Keesa last November at the Search Engine Journal Summit in New York City, and her presentation was of so much value that I just had to invite her onto my podcast. And I'm so glad we connected that day on Twitter, Keesa.
I am too. That was a great conference, Julia, and it was wonderful to connect with you afterwards.
I agree. So to start out, Keesa, tell us about your background and your role at Thomson Reuters.
Sure, absolutely. So my background actually is in journalism, and I started off as a magazine writer. I've written for Essence Magazine, Latina Magazine, Black Enterprise Magazine, and my focus was primarily on personal finance, entrepreneurial subjects, as well as careers. So those are the areas that they fell into, so to speak. And I have to say that, and now I'm a contributing writer with Startup Grind. And one of the things I hear most frequently when people describe me is the word curious. That always comes up all the time. And I think as a journalist, you have to have that degree of curiosity.
Yes.
And clearly, I mean, that goes way back. I can remember my grandmom asking me when I was little, child, why do you ask so many questions all the time? And she still asks me that from time to time. But
it sounds like my toddler. I have a 2-year-old that doesn't stop asking questions.
and I hope that she continues, because there's so much I feel that you can learn if you just ask the right questions. And so I really developed that and honed that as a journalist. And now as a marketer, I loved, finance, financial services. I loved working with small businesses, startups, entrepreneurs. And so that kind of led me into my role now, where my primary target audience, as we like to think of it as a community as opposed to audience, they would be developers. So those software engineers, market data managers, folks who, manage the data that's flowing in or flowing out of their firms, people who are using APIs to connect to the right data, to build the right systems, whether they be startups, fintechs, as we call them, finance and technology equals, fintech, whether they be folks who are entrepreneurs, so working within a firm and building some really cool, nice things for their end customers. What we really hope to do, Julia, is to supply them with the best answers and the best information so they can service their end users and their customers in the best way with those great tools that they're building.
And it sounds like you are a great fit for that very dynamic role.
Thank you. Thank you. I do love it. And I think, being dynamic is great, but working with dynamic people, I think, is really the key to keeping yourself, juiced and enthusiastic. So I really credit, the great people that I work with, the people that I consult, the entrepreneurs.
Oh, so true. So true. I feel the same way in what I do. And I think like that trait you talked about, being curious, that's so important to content marketing.
Absolutely.
Because that whole industry is always evolving, and you have to be curious about what's happening to stay on top of the trends, the tactics. So that's a great trait.
Yeah. And you are awesome at that, I might say. And that is something, you're right.
Thank you.
People think it's just a function sometimes of sitting down and writing, but to your point, you really have to be plugged in and you really have to be enthusiastic about it.
Yes, that is so true. Yeah. I digest so many articles in a week. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I sat down and counted and I think it adds up to like 5,000 in a year. And I don't even realize how much I'm reading, but I have to know the trends. As a content marketer, there's just so much going on. Mm-hmm. If you're not on top of it, you are behind.
Yes.
So next, let's talk about how great customer service and communication ties into great content. Mm-hmm. And I know you're here to share with us how businesses can build customer service and that great relationship while tying that into the copy they create. And that just sounds like it will create massively effective relationships, keep those customers craving more. So start out by sharing with us just best ways for businesses to start out thinking about building that core message to their audience.
Absolutely. And this is the fun part. So this is what really gets me excited. The first thing that I ask whoever I'm consulting is, why are you building this? I feel a lot of times we, myself included, when we do something, I might do it because I really like it or I really think it's cool. But if it's something that we want to commercialize, something that we want to really get out into the marketplace and something that we want to use to add value to people's lives, we really have to have a clear understanding of why are we building this? Who's having a problem? And what is that problem that causes us to want to build this or to create this or to offer this as a service? And as a marketer, as a content marketer, one of the things that I say is to speak to me plainly, clearly, as if I am a 6-year-old. Because in many cases, we're speaking with folks who have a great deal more technical knowledge. A lot of my stakeholders, they code, they, have been building things forever. I taught myself a bit of Python, and that's a language, coding language. So I don't have that tech background. So it's really important to speak clearly and always assume that your customer may not have the technical background that you have. So the clearer the message around why are you building this, the better.
That's really interesting because I've seen, so many voices going on in that very technical industry. Some people get really deep in their jargon, but I really like that approach. I think that it makes for super readable content and engaging content that people in the industry would want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And just in the last 2 questions that I ask, there are overall 3 questions that I ask when I'm looking at building content and making sure that, this is something that we can action into a story. The next question I ask is, who are you building this for? And for me, who are you building this for is a great question because that's where the persona designing process comes into play. Many of us have heard of customer personas, but for those of us who have not heard of it, it simply is a tool that allows you to understand more about your customer and to really put yourself in their shoes. And just to give a bit of background on what that persona consists of, I always say, sit down and think about who your customer is. Give that customer a name. Give them an age. Give them a life. What is their role? What job title do they have? What type of firm do they work for or is an entrepreneur? What do they like to do in their free time? And then really importantly, what are their pain points? Those things that keep them up at night and distress them about their work or their workflow. And then what are their pleasure points? What really delights them in terms of their work and what they're doing? What could make their job easier? And what are their motivations?
I love it. That's really hitting the core of developing great content. And to tie into that, I don't know if you've heard of this, but I recently read about a strategy where if you go to, like, once you've hammered out your ideal demographic, your ideal target audience type, if you go to one of their Twitter feeds, once you find someone really specific that aligns with that, and look at what they're sharing, look at what they're reading. Like if it's Entrepreneur, Forbes, then those are really great platforms to try to be a guest blogger on, because you're going to reach your ideal customer, ideal audience member.
Absolutely. And I love that, Julia, because that's really putting yourself in their shoes. I'm going to read what you're going to read. I'm going to go to the sites that you're going to visit. I'm going to, look at the platforms that you're visiting. Those are the things that really help us get into our customers' heads and our audience's heads. Because at the end of the day, it's all about designing a pleasant experience for them. We want every point in their customer journey to be the best for that customer, to be tailor-made for that customer. From the early point when they're viewing your website for the very first time to the point where they see you as consistently delivering value to their life. And that's the sweet spot when a customer can say that this product, the service is consistently delivering value to my life. And that's where you want to be. You spoke a little earlier about being in a relationship with the customer. And just like any relationship, when you have colleagues or friends or your spouse, and other people in your lives, family, parents, siblings, when someone can consistently deliver value to you, when you feel that that person is reliable, that brand is reliable, it does what it says that it will do, then that's when you have that relationship, or as I like to call it, that's when you develop a community, and you're a part of that customer's community and they're a part of your community.
I love it. So talking more on that line, thinking about really good customer service and how that ties into content, how can you provide a message of just really great customer service and show you care for your customers simply, through your copy, through your messages? What are just some ways that you clearly get that message across?
Yeah. The primary way that I found is what I call a use case. And I know a lot of folks in the industry use this, but a use case simply sets up the workflow. And it, number one, lets your customer know that I understand what you're doing in your process from beginning to end. I understand midway through your workflow that there is a pain point, that there is an issue. And I am going to propose my product, my service as a means to resolve your issue. This is how it will add a certain amount of value, whether it be simplifying your process, whether it be reducing costs, whether it be, adding some fun to what you do in your day to day. Be very, very clear in the use case what you're adding or what you're taking away. I think that that's a key point in a use case when you're really building out and showing customers that it's not about my product. I'm not going to spend your time, 2 minutes on this site telling you how great my product is. What I'm going to do is tell you that I have some insight into what you're doing, and I think I might know how I can make it simpler. I think I might know how I can make it cost less. And that's what's exciting to you. So being as customer-centric as you can in all of your content, and specifically what I call these use cases, is very important, because that's, as a customer, what grabs me when I'm on a website or when I'm in the middle of the customer journey.
Yes. And that really ties into the value proposition that you have as a company or a business or even a single marketer. Like, what is your value proposition, and centering that around the customer's problem, not around your product. I think that's huge, because that will speak so much to your target customer demographic. It's gonna speak right to their problem.
Yeah. And I think knowing that problem, and just really, as you said, being very customer centric, gets to that last of the three questions that I mentioned. That final, the third question is why is this a must for you to get this service or this product into the market? So as a entrepreneur, developer, artist, whatever you're choosing to do to serve people, why is that a must for you? So once we're clear on why we do what we do, why we serve in the way that we serve, and then marry that up with a need in the marketplace, then that's where success is surely to come in. Understanding why we're serving in the way we're serving, understanding and aligning that service with a need in the marketplace. And I say marketplace very broadly. You can serve in the marketplace. You can serve if you are not an entrepreneur in so many different ways. And I'll talk about that a little later with service. But once we understand what the greater need is and can align what we love to do with that need, that's where that really good sweet spot is.
Love it. So let's talk about next. Like once you have an audience hooked, how do you keep them coming back with your messages and just with reaching out to them, patterns, copy in your messages? What are just some strategies to keep them coming back for more?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things we talked about a bit earlier is knowing where they are. It's really important to bring in customers, and the best way to bring in a customer is to know where they hang out, just like anything else. If the best way to, get to X is to know where X hangs out. So to really understand, again, where that persona comes in, really understand what motivates them, what's important to them. And when we find out how our service or our product is important to them initially, we understand a bit more about what their future pain points might be. Okay. We understand a bit more about what's going on in the life cycle of whatever they're working on, or what's going on in the marketplace that might make it challenging, not just now, but 2-3 years from now, whether it's regulation, whether it's compliance. And coming from that, the background that I come from, those are two very key important things. Those are things that are always changing. So how can we add value, not just in this moment, but how can we understand what's going to be important in the next year or the next 2 years, get that insight, and how can we begin laying the foundation now so that customer understands that we are a place to get that valued information so they feel comfortable coming back to us, again, knowing that we will deliver on what we say that we'll deliver on.
Yes. And I think once you start down that path of finding your ideal demographic, your ideal customer, finding out what their problems are, talking about those very problems, once you start down that path, there is so much content to create.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I've been in several LinkedIn groups just doing a little bit of research. These LinkedIn groups are for writers. They're for online writers, online marketers. And, a lot of people comment, post stuff live day to day. So it's really cool to get just actionable insights that day. If you post content, share it in that group. That's what I've been doing. And I've been getting feedback from different writers in the group. And they're like, hey, this is what I still have a question on after reading your post. Can you address it in the next blog? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's great. And I create blogs around that.
That is amazing. And I really endorse that, Julia. I really endorse going out to talk to people who you know in your social networks as well as in other networks, because how can we find out, the best way to serve our customer, our best way to serve a segment if we aren't reaching out, having one-on-one conversations with them? And in your case, you're reaching out to other writers because that's your area. But the best way to begin a relationship and the best way to ensure that we're nurturing a relationship is to always ask questions, talk to customers, listen to them, but also talk to them, ask them questions, understand what their next steps are so you can be right there with them as a partner to continue to deliver value as they continue throughout the life journey of what they're doing. You can be right there as a partner.
So good. So a couple last questions for you.
Sure.
Going along that path in talking to your customer, getting their pain points, how would you suggest tying that to an editorial calendar, like just upkeeping a list of topics, like, oh, so-and-so was on chat today and their pain point was they don't know how to start a blog. Oh, maybe we should create a guide on how to find a hosting service, how to start your first blog. That's what we've done. And I just basically keep a Google Excel. I know it's very basic, but it's been working. But how do you suggest just tying in those pain points that customers have and tying that into creating actual content with a calendar or some other type of management system?
Absolutely. Now, I have to defend you there. Nothing's wrong with, you said you use Excel, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's old school, but sometimes old school is what you need, because old school is tried and true, right? Delivering that value, you can always count on Excel, right?
Exactly.
Excel's not going anywhere. So, and it's also not really about, to the extent that you can receive value, it's not all about the tool that you use. So I just wanted to say that I like to support old school when I can, as well as new school. But in terms of how do you build that content calendar, I love your first approach, which was okay, let me find out what's important to them. And if they say this is important to them, let me put that in my first quarter blog or my second quarter, content that I'm going to be blogging on. But another way to really take that to the next level is to reach out to those customers. And I say a small trial group, and that would depend on the business that you're in. I reach out to maybe a dozen and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about for next quarter. Does this resonate with you? Is this something you'd like to hear about? Good. What do you think that, would be a good follow-up after this? What are ways that we could reach out to your colleagues and people like you to get good feedback? Because that's one of the other things we want. When we blog, we really want to get some engagement going. We want people to read it, but we also want them to ask questions. We want this to prompt a broader conversation. So when we're designing when I'm designing what my calendar is going to look like, I'm thinking about articles, content that can prompt a broader conversation. And also I'm being very future focused. I'm understanding this piece that I do in March. Do I think that this could somehow be leveraged in April or May? Do I think there's a way to expound on this topic in April and May? Can we continue on this theme throughout? Now, not everything's going to be thematic, but in my approach to content calendars, I try to understand where the themes are and really build that out, because I found that a lot of my customers like to continue to be brought up to speed on, something that's a very similar topic. So we don't have to jump from topic 1 to topic 2 to topic 3. Sometimes that's not the best approach. It doesn't really work for our customers. Many times our customers want to hear a continuation of the story that we started. So a content calendar, again, the way that I use it is to really focus in on a few key themes. I take those themes and I share them with my core audience. Some of them might be internal to my firm. Others might be external, but share with my internal partners and say, hey, you're a developer. You know what's going on. Is this something that you think will resonate with other developers? And if so, really think about how to leverage that for future content.
Yes. Love it. Love it. And there's so much to do once you start, collaborating like that. I just love that, because there is untold amounts of content you can create once you start down that road, we have found out. And you can tie that into, ongoing topics that are under the same umbrella. I love that, because you can tie that into long tail keywords, plugging that into content, which will get your content to rank very well.
Absolutely.
So that's a great umbrella tactic.
And just one other thing, don't be shy about asking for your partner's support. So if you have an article that's interesting to you, if there's someone who could be a co-writer, you could also leverage their access to their digital tools, leverage their website. There might be some opportunities for you to gain market share or to gain audience share that you would not have if you just use your own resources. So if it makes sense to bring in a partner who is a thought leader in a certain area, there's an opportunity there to access a greater audience. So that's an excellent way where there is that thought leadership and there is that additional value. That's an excellent way to really leverage resources. And as you said, the keywords are very important to really get the message out there. But I would not just make sure that it's so keyword heavy that, it kind of reads as if it's designed to only attract people. Really stick with the story. If a writer sticks with their story, the keywords are important and they're going to be there. And an audience is going to be drawn to the authenticity of the article.
Totally agree. We've taken that approach in our content where the keyword is really second in our minds, or even third. The first thing in our minds is the topic, the audience, the person. Yes. And then it's like, okay, and there's a focus keyword to optimize for. And it's clear at the end of the post.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So and the other thing you said about, really that's called influencer marketing. That is a whole nother podcast episode. That is such a great topic, just collaborating with partners, influencers. And once you get them to contribute something related to the topic, then you can pretty much ask them to share it and they will gladly do that with their audience, which could be, 10 times bigger than yours. So that is just a huge avenue for content marketing.
Absolutely.
To wrap this up, Keesa, I know I'm really excited to hear that you are launching a podcast. So tell us about that.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. My podcast, which is called the You Have Been Served podcast with Keesa Schreane. It really focuses in on how we can serve people in our everyday lives. And I've interviewed so far some great people that I'm so excited about. Soledad O'Brien, who is a journalist, Matt Wallard, who is most recently with Microsoft Ventures. And we really explored how we generate tremendous value when we're clear on what we do well and what we love to do, and align that with a need. And I mentioned earlier, for business folks, it's a need in the marketplace. It might be a need in the community or a need in the neighborhood. It could very well be a need in your own house, but in many cases, there is an opportunity for us to give back, to really deliver value in a way that many times is unsung, if you will, but it's delivering value nonetheless. So there are a couple of quotes that are really, I think, foundational that I love to share to my podcast. One is by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. And I think that's very true. And what I try to bring out in this podcast is how we can incorporate it in our everyday lives. Another quote that I love is by Arthur Ashe, and he really brings out, I think, the spirit of this too. True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost. And honestly, Julia, that's the foundation of my podcast. It's really to inspire us to look inward into what we can offer someone else to make someone else's day a bit brighter. So I'm looking at launching that in February of 2017. So stay tuned, really excited, and really looking to get feedback and to hear from folks on what resonates with them from a service perspective and how they feel that we can take service to another level based on how they've taken service to another level and how it made a difference in the lives of the people that they served, as well as in their own lives, because that emotional attachment, you just can't get past it. And when you do serve in some capacity and give to others, there is a strong, positive emotional feeling with that. And just like with building customer relationships, it's wonderful when that strong, positive emotional feeling can take root in that service, because that's what really supports us in doing it better throughout the course of our careers and throughout the course of our service.
Beautiful. That sounds like a very inspirational podcast. I think I'm going to have to tune in.
Well, great. Definitely.
So that is called You Have Been Served with Keesa Schreane. And are you looking to launch that in iTunes?
Yes. I'm going to launch it in iTunes.
Awesome. We'll definitely be on the lookout for that podcast. It sounds like a great one. And thank you so much for being here, Keesa. I really, really enjoyed our session.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Julia, and all the best to you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Write Podcast. For more episodes, go to expresswriters.com/write-podcast. See you on the next one.